Hello, this is Scott Cordell with Sullivan University, and this is video number 2 in a series of 4 to help students get used to and start using Sullivan's ITALab for the course CSC210 Database Design. Now in the first video, we discussed how to connect to Sullivan's VDI and how to use the ITALab to connect through it through Microsoft System Center. In this video, we're going to actually assume that you've watched video number 1, and we're going to go ahead and move on and start building a virtual machine instead. So let's get started. Now you can tell that I'm on the VDI once again from this toolbar at the top. That shows that these are the Citrix receiver tools that I can use. And I've got all the tools that are built in on our campus system all pre-made inside of here. What we need to do is actually open up the virtual machine manager once again. And the easiest way is, of course, just search for it, the virtual machine manager console. Again, since I've been here before, it remembers my connection. I simply hit connect. Remember that in this case, if you happen to have multiple roles, you've got to choose the course you're in. So I'm of course going to choose CSC210 for database design. Hit OK, and then wait just a few moments to let it actually go and gather all of my information, connect me to the virtual service center, and produce a list of all of the virtual machines I've either created or have available to me. In this case, here is the server, and by the way, none of this will show on your side because these are not under your account, they are under mine. So you'll be able to connect to the server because it's in the same VLAN, but you do not have any access to the live image of the server. I've also previously built another VM so that you could actually see what one looks like. So we're going to build this same thing again. I'm simply going to use that naming convention and build another one and actually call it O2. And by the way, all of these instructions will be inside the video notes on YouTube, so you can actually have a link down there to get a PDF version of all of these files or all of the instructions for this setup. Once you're on this screen and you can see an image or a picture of all the images that you have running, all the virtuals you've got running, to get started here, what we're going to do is make sure you're on the home part, and we're going to create a virtual machine. Now we have a pattern for naming this, so you have to do this our way because we put certain limits in there. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new one using a template. We are not going to use another virtual machine. We're not going to use a hard disk. So when we hit browse, please notice I don't want you to use a machine you've already got running possibly, or an HDX, a hard drive down here. Instead, under the VM template, we have one built. Please notice this number right here, 16.6. That will be very crucial later on for installing your IP address so that you can actually connect to everyone else and everything else on this system. So we are in the 16.6 subnet this time. I'm going to choose this template. Again, not another image, not a hard drive, just the template. And hit next. Under the virtual machine name, you'll have to follow the pattern we have built previously. The pattern involves several pieces of information that you should have, such as starting with your course number, the OS type that you're going to build, and this time we're building a Windows 10 image. Your subnet designation, remember we just saw that when we looked at the template, 16.6. You do not need to type in the whole address, I just need that designation. And then your student ID. Mine is no numbers. As an instructor, I do not have extra numbers behind mine. And then finally, a number to designate which VM this is for you. Since I've built a previous one, this will be my second one for Windows 10. I'll hit next. And I highly encourage you not to change any hardware configuration here. Instead, wait for the image to be built and change that later. Hit next again to deploy it to our cloud. And then on this screen, you'll hit next and just wait for one thing, and that is, hopefully here, 5-star rating. That just means that you have a very good connection to our system, which if you're on the VDI, there's no reason you should not have a 5-star rating here. Now, as far as add properties, we're going to leave it to do not turn on the virtual machine when you boot up the system manager. And we also want to change this, though, to turn off the VM if for some reason the virtualization server stops. At that point, I'll hit next, gives me my summary, and I'll hit create. You'll have a job window that pops up, and it will show you that it's already created the template, it's deployed the new configuration, and right now it's putting it out on the Sullivan University, the SU cloud. Notice It is not taking long at all to do this. Once that window completes and there are no other jobs to finish, close that, and you can see here's my image right here. So on this image, it starts in a stopped position, or it is in a stopped position. What you'll need to realize here is this is a bare metal machine. It does not have an OS. Just because we said Windows 10 does not mean it has Windows 10. Instead, it's bare metal, which means we need to install Windows 10. That can simply be done by right-clicking on the image, coming down to Properties, and back in that screen, this is a summary again of everything we've done. We're going to go back to Hardware, and under Virtual DVD Drive, we're going to choose an existing ISO image and browse to go pick the Windows 10 Enterprise Evaluation with the 1709 update in it, and just hit OK. Please be sure right here to click that you're going to share the file instead of copying it. If you do not check that, your installation time is going to stretch by 10 to 15 minutes. This right here will make it copy much quicker for you so that you can actually install quicker. And click OK. Notice it's updating and now is in a stopped position. Always wait for that stopped position to come up. I know I've got two running up here, but when you're messing with a VM, such as updating the hardware, changing images, doing any kind of adjustments to it, please stop it first. But now we have a bare metal machine, basically with a DVD with Windows 10 sitting in it. So I'm going to right click and power on. You also have a power on button up here. It goes to starting and finally into running, and now that it's running I can right click, connect or view via console. And I'm going to put mine full screen so it'll fit the video here better. And you get to watch Windows start up. I'm going to go through this very quickly. In fact, you'll notice the screenshots seem to skip here and there because I don't want to sit here and record 8 minutes of nothing happening, and nor do you want to watch 8 minutes of nothing happening. So I'll hit next, install now. All right, agree to the licensing. And this time, we're not upgrading. There was no OS, so we're going to do a custom install using the full disk. Just hit next. And here's where you're going to start noticing the video will skip a little bit, especially here. So I'll pause this and come back whenever it's finished up. Now, once the install has gone through the initial setup, make sure that you let it just run. Don't touch anything. In other words, if it pops up and says, please press any key to boot from CD or DVD, just leave it alone. Instead, let it boot up the Windows image here. And after a few moments, it will come up with a screen that we can actually start doing stuff with, such as choosing languages and layouts and stuff. Notice the screen has changed a bit. We are in the getting ready process, which could take an easy 10 minutes on just a normal system. So just hang in there, we'll be there shortly. Eventually the screen will change to something like this, where it continues to tell you that it's still going to take a few minutes and it's just going to be a moment longer, so just bear with it. And finally, we can actually do something. This means that Windows has installed most of the local files and they're ready to go and continue settings. So we will choose US here. We're going to skip the additional keyboard layout. And we're going to skip the network connection for now. Be sure to give yourself credentials here. And a usable password that you will remember, as well as some type of hint. I have a standard one I use for these things. I would prefer to turn off Cortana on this virtual because we're not going to use it for classroom purposes. And as well as turn off every option that Microsoft wants to allow us to use in their new wonderful system here. Since this is a VM, I just don't have much use for it. Once again, it is going through the system, so you'll see some skipping here. And after everything is said and done, we actually have a working image now. Now we still have a little bit of work left to do with this, but at this point I do have an operational Windows 7 system. Now on this Windows 7 system, I do not have an IP address yet. So what you're going to do is actually go to Open Network and Internet Settings. You can either do that right click here, or you can actually click on it and get there the same way. In this window, the other thing we've got to do is actually not mess with all this. We're going to come straight down to Change Adapter Options. Now, a few things we do in the adapter options to make it a little bit easier for you is to turn some things on and off so that you don't have to worry about them, such as the second NIC. There's no need for it, so I'm going to right-click here and disable it. But for the main NIC, Ethernet 1 or Ethernet 0, I'm going to go down to Properties, right-click and go to Properties. In the configuration here, I want to turn off IPv6. Also make sure that the network adapter multiplexer is off. But then for IPv4, I'm going to go and set this up. Now these settings will be set up according to whatever numbers your instructor gives you. So I'm going to use a set of numbers that I know work. There we go. And at this point, I'll hit OK. Close this, and then this window, and then wait a second, and hopefully Windows 10 comes over here on the sidebar and tells me that I am connected. And sure enough, we are connected. Go ahead and click yes to share so that you can touch the server. The server can actually see your pieces as well. So we'll hit yes there. We have a good connection. And if we wanted to check it, we could actually, I'm going to go back to full screen for a moment, open up a browser. Edge is the one that's built in, so I have to give it just a second to start up for the first time and go through a few settings on its own. But once we get past that, I can actually go and look up something like poll4.com, something I definitely haven't looked at on this image before, and it should get me to their website. So we have a working browser inside of a working OS. Last bit of cleanup here. Go ahead and shut down your image. And I'll get off full screen so we can see what's happening in the back here. Notice that this is the image right here that's marked as running. It is shutting down. There is a way to go in and make sure it doesn't check for updates, but eventually this happens. It says I don't have a connection, and it will do the same thing back here in the back saying that that image has stopped. So what I'll do is actually close this image since I can't really view it now. Now that it's stopped, I want you to right click, go back to Properties. We're going back to Hardware Configuration, and in the DVD drive, change it to No Media. In other words, eject the DVD. Otherwise, next time you boot up, it could tell you it needs to start up and start saving all over again. So now it's finished. You can now reboot and get in there just fine. So in this video, we built your first VM using the ITALab system, using the Virtual Machine Manager, part of Service Center 2016, on our VDI. Now in the next video, we're actually going to load MySQL Workbench, and the final video, we're going to set up your settings on that. This video was about twice as long as the previous one. I promise the next two will be short. Thanks again for watching.